Dear Chosen One, have you ever noticed how simply embracing your truth seems to stir something uncomfortable in others? You didn't say much. You didn't try to prove anything. And still, the atmosphere changed. Eyes shifted. Some people grew distant without reason. Others began to compete with you over things you never cared about. It's not your personality they fear. It's your presence. It's not your opinions that threaten them. It's your gifts. The ones you didn't ask for. The ones you tried to hide. But now they're surfacing. And with every awakening, you begin to realize your very existence is a disruption to systems that were never built to hold someone like you. Your gifts aren't just special. They're dangerous, but only to those who live by domination. What God placed inside you was not designed to blend in or entertain. It was designed to confront, to liberate, to expose what manipulates in silence. And like Moses, who was called not for perfection, but for his prophetic presence, you too were raised in hiddenness for a reason. Because the gifts you carry are weapons, not for destruction, but for spiritual overthrow, the kind that dismantles lies, that breaks invisible chains, that makes people question the very structures that keep them asleep. And they can feel it. Long before you fully awaken, they sense the tremor of your spirit. That's why this message is for you. Because the moment you start owning your gift, you also start exposing what they never wanted to be seen. In this video, we're going to reveal why your presence activates resistance, why your gifts feel like a threat to those in power, and how to finally step into your mission without shame or fear. If this is already stirring something in your soul, write in the comments, "I was born to set captives free." And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Now take a breath, because everything is about to make sense. They noticed it before you did. That thing in you, that frequency that couldn't be tamed, that sensitivity you tried to silence. Long before you had language for your gift, others around you were already reacting to it, subtly but consistently. As a child, you were probably told you were too much, too quiet, too intense, too sensitive. But none of that was ever the truth. The truth is, they didn't know what to do with someone whose spirit couldn't be programmed. So they tried to contain you, not out of hate, but out of fear. What you didn't know back then is that gifts carry codes. Codes that interrupt spiritual systems. Codes that disarm invisible agreements. When you walk into a room, your very being destabilizes the equilibrium of control. And those who benefit from keeping others emotionally dependent, spiritually confused, or energetically asleep, they feel it. You don't have to do anything grand. Your presence alone is a signal. It says, liberation is here. And for those attached to domination, that's terrifying. This is exactly why God never rushed your awakening, because he knew what your gift would provoke. Moses wasn't sent to Pharaoh immediately after discovering his calling. He was trained in the wilderness, not to sharpen his tongue, but to quiet his ego, to learn stillness, to be emptied of the need for validation. Because those who confront systems of control can't be seduced by the same spirit they're called to cast out. And neither can you. Your gift was never meant to be flashy. It was meant to be feared by the false. You see, when your gift is rooted in truth, it's not always welcomed. Because truth confronts, it reveals, it uncovers motives and disrupts cycles. That's why your awakening was met with resistance. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're finally doing what you were created to do. The very people who claim to want healing often rejected you the moment your presence made them face their wounds. That's the paradox of the chosen. You were sent to set them free, but they wanted to stay in their chains. And this is where the real battle begins. Not outside, but inside. Because the enemy's greatest tactic is to make you believe your gift is a problem, that your presence is a burden, that your voice brings chaos, But let me tell you something. What they call chaos is simply the truth reordering the atmosphere. It's not that you're disruptive. It's that you don't allow dysfunction to stay disguised. And for systems built on fear, your honesty is a threat they can't control. That's why so many tried to redirect your path. They offered you safer roles, smaller versions of yourself. They told you to be humble, to be quiet, to be less visible, not because they cared about your peace, but because they feared your fire. And when you started realizing that your gift was never meant to serve their comfort, everything changed. You stopped asking for permission. You stopped shrinking. You stopped apologizing for the power that God placed in you for a reason. You were never meant to be tolerated. You were meant to be released. And the longer you held back, the more restless your spirit became. That's why certain environments started to feel suffocating, not because they were evil, but because your gift had outgrown the cage. And when God begins to expand you, no human limitation can contain what heaven assigned to move. You're not broken. You're breaking through. What you must understand now is this: the weight you felt for years wasn't a curse. It was the tension of a gift trying to emerge in a world that taught you to suppress it. Every time you questioned your worth, every time you tried to be normal, every time you doubted your discernment, something holy inside of you was resisting that programming, because your spirit always knew that you weren't here to conform. You were here to carry something sacred, and that sacred thing comes with pressure. It comes with resistance. Because it was never meant to blend in, it was meant to disrupt systems that enslave souls in silence. That's why you never fit in with crowds that praised superficial gifts. Your depth made them uncomfortable. Your silence exposed their noise. Your clarity pierced through the fog they used to survive. And for people who depended on confusion to control others, your perception was a direct threat. They weren't offended by your presence. They were exposed by it. You reminded them of what they buried. You triggered the part of them that once had a calling, but traded it for acceptance. And now, your rising confronts the cost of their compromise. That's spiritual warfare. Not always loud, but always real. Some of them tried to turn your gift against you. They labeled you prideful, rebellious, too spiritual, or too intense. Not because you were, but because they hoped you would shrink. If they could convince you that your discernment was delusion, you'd stop seeing through them. If they could shame you for being different, you'd stop awakening others. But what they didn't realize is that your gift doesn't come from validation. It comes from vision, from divine intimacy, from walking through fires they never even saw. You've bled in silence. You've carried burdens no one applauded. And that's exactly why your gift is sharp, refined, pure. Let's get clear on something. Chosen one, the battle was never about you. It was about what's inside of you. What you carry disturbs demonic patterns, ancestral agreements, and generational strongholds. Every time you pray, something breaks. Every time you speak, something shifts. You may not see it, but the spirit realm does. That's why the attacks felt personal. That's why the rejection hit so deep. Because the enemy has studied your blueprint. And the moment your gift becomes active, it activates tremors in places that depended on your silence. This is not imagination. It's strategy. The pressure is proof of purpose. And now you're reaching the point where your spirit no longer allows you to settle. The old environments feel too small. The old conversations drain you. The people who once seemed powerful now appear hollow. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. Your vision is rising. Your ears are tuning in to a higher frequency. And it's making you selective, discerning, focused. Because your gift doesn't have time for distraction anymore. You're not here to be liked. You're here to liberate. And liberation demands separation. Not from love, but from lies disguised as love. You're being called higher. You're beginning to see the spiritual blueprint unfold, that everything, from your childhood wounds to your adult losses, was a preparation for this awakening. You were never abandoned. You were hidden. You were never overlooked. You were protected. God didn't withhold your moment. He preserved your mantle, because gifts like yours are not to be rushed. They require wilderness, silence, surrender. Only then can you rise with power that doesn't corrupt. That's why you had to walk alone, why you were misunderstood, why you kept hearing, "You've changed." The truth is, you remembered who you are. And now comes the turning point. The moment where hiding is no longer holy, where false humility becomes disobedience. Because the world needs your gift in full operation, there are souls waiting for the sound in your voice. There are atmospheres waiting to be cleared by your presence. There are chains waiting to break when you walk in the room. This is not about ego. It's about assignment. It's about answering the call that's been echoing through your being since before you were born. And now is the time to rise without apology. Not because you're better, but because your obedience will heal what silence never could. This is why your gift had to be refined in obscurity, because if it had been activated too soon, you might have misused it to please others instead of serving truth. You might have sought applause instead of alignment. But God, in His infinite wisdom, delayed certain platforms so your roots could grow deeper than your visibility. He was preparing a foundation that no storm could shake, because the storm would come. The resistance was always going to be part of the mission, not because you're cursed, but because your gift challenges what this world normalizes. And nothing challenges darkness more than a soul awakened by divine fire. When Moses returned to Egypt, he didn't come back to impress Pharaoh. He came back to confront him. He came back carrying signs, authority, and a message from God Himself. And still, Pharaoh hardened his heart. This is a blueprint. Don't expect those in power to recognize your purpose. Don't expect manipulators to applaud your freedom. Some people will resist your rising no matter how pure your heart is. Not because you're wrong, but because your obedience threatens their illusion of control. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be sent. And those who are sent don't wait for permission. They move when God says move. It's time to stop doubting the way you were wired. There's a reason your senses are sharp. Your dreams are vivid. Your spirit detects deception before evidence shows. That's not paranoia. That's protection. That's not overthinking. That's overhearing. You were created to hear what others ignore, to see what others deny, and to speak what others won't. This is why your life has never been simple, why your peace has always felt hard-won. You weren't built for comfort, you were forged for clarity. And clarity doesn't come cheap. It requires solitude, depth, and the willingness to live as a mirror in a world addicted to masks. Here's the revelation. Every attack was a confirmation. Every misunderstanding was a redirection. Every season of silence was a strengthening. Nothing was wasted. Not the rejection, not the confusion, not even the betrayal. Because what the enemy meant for harm, heaven restructured into wisdom, into oil, into discernment you couldn't have learned from books. You earned this gift, not through merit, but through surrender, through trusting God in the dark, through letting go when it hurt, through staying soft when life tried to harden you. And that's what makes you unstoppable now. Not your skill, but your surrender. You carry a different frequency, one that doesn't dominate, but liberates, one that doesn't control, but activates. Your presence doesn't demand attention, it commands respect from the unseen. Because your gift is not a show, it's a sword, not to harm, but to divide truth from delusion. And wherever you go, people feel the shift. Some will avoid you, others will cling to you. Many won't understand why they react the way they do, but you will. You've lived enough spiritual battles to recognize when your gift is working, even in silence, especially in silence. You are no longer who you were last season. The version of you that tolerated manipulation, that stayed silent to keep the peace, that questioned your value to maintain harmony, that version is gone. And in its place is someone anointed, aware, and aligned. Someone who sees beyond the surface. Someone who can no longer be gaslit by flattery or confused by charisma. You've grown beyond needing to explain your presence. Now you simply show up, and the atmosphere tells the story. And those who can see it, they'll honor you. Those who can't, were never meant to walk with you. And now comes the moment of divine clarity. You've been asking, why has it been so hard to be seen? Why do my gifts attract resistance? And the answer is this: because you were never meant to entertain the room. You were meant to expose it, to shift it, to clean it. Your gift is not ornamental, it's operational. It does things others can't see. It breaks things others can't name. It heals things others gave up on. That's why it's sacred. That's why it was fought. And that's why you can no longer afford to hide it. You see, chosen one, God never gives gifts for decoration. He gives them for destruction, not of people, but of principalities. Your gift is a divine disruptor. It dismantles what is false, reveals what is hidden, and awakens what's been dormant in others. That's why your presence brings clarity, even when you say nothing. That's why people confess things to you they've never told anyone. That's why atmospheres shift when you walk in. Because what's in you carries weight in realms beyond the physical. And it's not about pride, it's about responsibility. You are carrying something that was designed to break chains, and you are the vessel, not the source. And the deeper truth is this: if your gift didn't carry weight, it wouldn't be attacked. The fact that you've been through emotional storms, spiritual warfare, and relational sabotage is not a sign of weakness. It's evidence of impact. Nobody attacks what doesn't threaten the system. And the system you're threatening isn't just societal, it's spiritual. Every time you choose truth over performance, silence over reaction, stillness over chaos, you are shaking the foundations of control. You are reminding the world that freedom still exists, that not everyone bows to the fear that governs the masses. Because what you carry doesn't blend in, it confronts. It doesn't soothe egos, it stirs conviction. And when you walk into a space that's built on image, your authenticity feels like a threat. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. And realness carries power. Realness exposes pretense. Realness forces people to feel things they've numbed for years. That's why some shrink around you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your very presence removes their excuses. And this is the silent price of carrying a rare gift. Not everyone will know how to receive you. They'll misread your discernment as judgment. They'll interpret your stillness as pride. They'll call your boundaries too much, not because you're too much, but because your standards expose their lack of them. And in a world addicted to performance and applause, someone who walks with quiet conviction becomes offensive. But chosen one, you weren't called to make others comfortable. You were called to make atmospheres shift. You've probably felt it before. The room go quiet when you enter. The subtle glances, the tension, the way people either draw closer with reverence or retreat in resistance. That's not social awkwardness. That's spiritual contrast. What's in you demands alignment. And anything unaligned will feel pressure to either transform or withdraw. This is why your journey has felt lonely at times. Not because you're unworthy of connection, but because you were designed for depth. And depth will always intimidate the shallow. So don't confuse rejection with failure. Don't confuse distance with dishonor. Many had to step away because they couldn't handle what you activate in them. And that's okay. You were never meant to be understood by everyone, just obeyed by heaven. The assignment on your life is weighty. The calling is costly. And the more you honor what's in you, the more heaven will trust you with greater realms, greater reach, and greater responsibility. This is why you couldn't stay in certain places, why some friendships faded without closure, why some mentors turned into manipulators. Because your growth outpaced their comfort zone. Because your gift illuminated what they worked hard to keep hidden. And when someone isn't ready to confront themselves, they'll often demonize the one who reminds them it's time. But don't take it personally. Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor, except in his own hometown." Sometimes your presence is too familiar for them to recognize your anointing. That doesn't make you less chosen. It just makes their discernment limited. So instead of shrinking, expand. Instead of apologizing, align. Instead of asking why, ask what now? What now that you know your gift isn't a mistake? What now that you feel the weight of your mission awakening? What now that the silence you once feared has become your sanctuary of wisdom? This is the season where you stop waiting to be discovered and start walking like you've already been deployed. You are not waiting for your gift to be validated. Heaven has already stamped it with fire, and the world is just catching up. Because gifts like yours don't need announcement. They reveal themselves in function. Your discernment clears confusion. Your words bring remembrance. Your stillness disarms chaos. These aren't skills you learned in books. They're downloads from the Spirit. And when you operate from that place, you're not just helping people. You're realigning timelines, breaking generational cycles, opening spiritual eyes. This is the real work, the sacred assignment, the unseen restoration of souls. And you're doing it just by being who you are. That's why the enemy tried so hard to confuse you about your identity. Because if you ever truly accepted who you are, fully, unapologetically, joyfully, the game would be over. His access would be revoked. His illusions would collapse. His agents would be exposed. That's the true danger of your gift. Not that it makes you powerful, but that it makes you clear. And clarity is the death of manipulation. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you know, you can't unknow. And once you rise, they can no longer reach you through the tactics that used to work. So let this be your reminder. Your gift is not just a blessing. It's a blueprint, a map, a key. It holds instructions for your assignment, protection for your journey, and warnings for the places you don't belong. You were never meant to live like everyone else, because you were sent to awaken what they forgot. And awakening will always feel like loss at first. But what you're losing now is everything that was never worthy of the weight you carry. You've come too far to turn back now. After everything you've endured, the nights of silence, the inner battles, the rejection you couldn't explain, you finally see the truth. You were never crazy. You were never too much. You were never broken. You were simply anointed in a way this world didn't have language for. And that anointing called forth a pressure you couldn't escape. But now, instead of resisting it, you're ready to embrace it. Not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. Because it means your gift has matured beyond survival into purpose. You're beginning to realize that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a radar. Your discernment isn't paranoia, it's protection. Your isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Everything that once made you feel disconnected is now becoming the very evidence that you've been set apart. And not for superiority, but for service. You were never called to dominate. You were called to liberate. And liberation requires someone brave enough to walk alone until others are strong enough to follow. So breathe deeply. Reconnect with the part of you that always knew there was something more. That voice inside that whispered truths when no one else could see. That instinct you used to ignore because you wanted to be liked. It's time to honor that voice now. That's the voice of your gift. That's the sound of alignment. That's God confirming that you've stepped into the frequency of who you truly are, not what the world labeled you to be. And this is the restoration. Not a return to who you were before the pain, but a rebirth into someone wiser, freer, more grounded in truth. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to keep walking in the light you carry and let the fruit of your presence speak for itself. Because real power is never loud. It's consistent, rooted, untouchable by drama, but undeniable in presence. That's where you are now. So if this word has stirred something in your spirit, if you feel your gift awakening, remembering, rising, declare it now in the comments. My gift is sacred. Your voice matters. Your presence is needed. And your courage to step fully into who you are might just be the permission someone else needed to do the same. If this message served you, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next word that's meant for your soul. And to those who have been supporting this mission through Buy Me a Coffee, thank you. Your love and generosity make it possible for us to continue creating these soul-shifting messages with excellence. If you feel led to support as well, the link is in the pinned comment below. Every gift helps us expand the light we're here to carry, and for that, I'm deeply grateful. But don't stop here. This journey is just beginning. There's another video on the screen right now, and I know your spirit is ready for what it carries. Let this be your sacred space, your fuel, your fire, your reminder that you are never alone on this path. Because when you do, nothing can stop what God has already set in motion.